There is a special kind of loneliness born on an empty road at night. It is the line where fatigue crosses into something else, where the shadows on the shoulder take shape. They say the road doesn't create ghosts, it just reveals the ones that were already there. The ones waiting for the next traveler. The ones who offer help with a smile that doesn't reach their eyes. The ones who collect a toll that can't be measured in money. Every long journey is not just a path from point A to point B. It's an encounter. And sometimes a part of the traveler never quite reaches the destination.
Sometimes reality gets a hairline fracture. I know, because I fell into one. It doesn't look like a chasm. It looks like an old, God-forsaken toll booth in the middle of nowhere. My name is Ryan. Last summer, I was driving cross-country, and on one of the roads, I had to pay a toll. The problem is, he wasn't taking money, and I'm still not sure what exactly I gave him. I first saw the toll booth after midnight. I was on an old highway in Utah, not on any GPS, trying to take a shortcut. Around me, there was only desert and a sky as black as ink. Not a single car for the last 2 hours. And then, suddenly, in my headlights, I saw it. A small wooden booth with a barrier arm blocking the road. No signs, no warnings, just a booth. In the window sat an old man in a uniform that had no identifying marks. I pulled up and rolled down my window. The air smelled of dust and sagebrush. The man just stared at me. His face was a road map of wrinkles, and his eyes were completely colorless. "Toll," he rasped. I reached for my wallet, but he raised a hand. "We don't take money," he said. I froze. "Then what do you take?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. He took his time answering, just watching me. The non-monetary payment was more terrifying than any robbery. I sat in my car, the silence pressing in on me. "So, what's the toll?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice from shaking. The old man leaned slowly toward the window, and I caught a whiff of mothballs and old earth. "We just need a memory. Any one, but a real one. One you've never told anyone." I thought it had to be some kind of weird joke, a prank, but there was no hint of humor in his colorless eyes. I decided to play along, just to get him to raise that damned barrier. I thought of a stupid story from my childhood, how I stole a candy bar from a store and blamed it on another boy. I'd never told anyone. I briefly recounted the story to him. He listened without blinking. When I finished, he nodded slowly. I felt a strange, subtle dizziness, as if something had been gently pulled from my head. The old man pressed a button. The barrier arm slowly rose. "Proceed," he said. I slammed on the gas and sped away, not looking back.
The attempt to recall what I'd told him was the beginning of my nightmare. After driving for a few miles, I pulled over to the shoulder. My heart was pounding. I tried to calm down, telling myself it was just a weird old man. I tried to bring the candy bar story back to mind, to run through it one more time. And I couldn't. I remembered stealing something. I remembered it was during my childhood. But all the details, the boy's face, the name of the store, Even the taste of that candy were gone. In their place, in my memory, was just a white, empty blank. He hadn't just listened to my memory, he had taken it. He had literally ripped it out of my head, leaving a ragged wound in the fabric of my past. Panic washed over me. What else could he have taken? I started frantically cycling through my most private memories, checking to see if they were all still there. It felt like knowing a thief had been in your house, but not knowing what was missing.
The second encounter, which should not have been possible, shattered my reality. A few hours later, I finally merged onto a major highway. I drove for days, trying to forget the incident, convincing myself it was a dream. 3 days later, I was in a different state, 1,000 miles away. I was again driving on a remote road at night, and then I saw it. The same wooden booth, the same barrier. I slammed on the brakes. It was impossible. It couldn't be here. In the window sat the same old man with the colorless eyes. He was looking at me as if he'd been waiting. A primal terror seized me. I spun the car around and sped off in the opposite direction. Half an hour later, I saw the same booth ahead in my headlights. No matter which way I drove, which turn I took, I would always end up back at it. The road had become a loop with him at the center. I realized I had no choice. The final toll was my sentence. I pulled up to the booth, my hands trembling. The old man looked at me without any emotion. "Toll," he rasped. "I don't have any more secrets," I squeezed out. He slowly shook his head. "There's one," he said. "A memory you haven't made yet." I didn't understand. "What are you talking about?" "The memory of you turning around and driving away from here," he explained. "The memory of being free again." I understood. He was offering to let me go in exchange for the memory of my own escape, in exchange for hope. I agreed. I closed my eyes and pictured the barrier rising, pictured myself driving away, feeling a wave of relief. I felt the familiar dizziness. When I opened my eyes, the barrier was up and the road ahead was clear. I drove off. It was only an hour later, when I was back on a familiar highway, that the full horror of it hit me. I remembered paying, but I had absolutely no memory of how I had left, of the barrier rising. I don't remember the feeling of freedom. And now, whenever I drive on any road, I can't shake the feeling that I'm still there, stopped in front of that barrier, and that my entire life since then is just a dream I'm having while he waits for me to pay again. What I'm about to tell you happened last summer, and it ruined the human smile for me. It used to be a sign of trust, of friendliness. Now, when I see a smile that's a little too wide, a little too long, I want to run. My name is Chris. My car broke down one night, and a man with the kindest smile I had ever seen stopped to help me. That smile nearly cost me my soul. I first saw his smile when my car finally died. It was deep in the night, and I was on an empty highway between two towns with no cell service. The engine suddenly sputtered and went silent. Around me there was only darkness and the chirping of crickets. I sat in the car for almost an hour when headlights appeared behind me. An old pickup truck stopped. A middle-aged man in work overalls got out. "Trouble, friend?" he asked, and he smiled. It was a wide, genuine smile that made his eyes crinkle. It was instantly disarming. He was the very picture of a good Samaritan. He introduced himself as Dave, said he lived nearby and could tow me to his place, and that he'd take a look at the car in the morning. I agreed.
I didn't see any other option. He helped me hook up the tow rope, and the entire time he never stopped smiling.
The unnatural friendliness in his house made me start to doubt. We arrived at his old farmhouse. Inside, it was clean and cozy. He introduced me to his wife, who was also smiling, the same wide, unchanging smile. They offered me dinner, a guest room. Their kindness was almost aggressive. And then I started noticing the strange things. When I talked about my job, Dave would nod and say, "Yeah, sales is tough," but his smile wouldn't change. When I accidentally spilled some water, he said, "Don't you worry, it happens." But his smile remained fixed in place. It never faltered, not for a second. It was like a mask glued to his face. I started avoiding looking him in the eye, because that constant expression of benevolence was beginning to cause not comfort, but anxiety. There wasn't a single mirror in his house, not one. I asked for the bathroom, and when I went in, the space above the sink where a mirror should have been was just a blank wall.
The empty frames on the walls were the proof that something was wrong. I couldn't sleep. I quietly slipped out of my room and started walking around the house. I noticed there were a lot of picture frames on the walls, but all of them were empty, perfectly arranged, but with no photos. It was bizarre. In the living room, on the fireplace mantel, sat a single photograph in a silver frame. I moved closer. The photo was of a family, a man, a woman, 2 children. They were standing in front of this very house, but they weren't smiling. Their faces were contorted in expressions of unspeakable terror. They were looking not at the camera, but at something just outside the frame with a look of primal fear. And then I realized, the man in the photograph, it wasn't Dave. It was a different person. This was probably the real family that lived here. But Dave and his wife? Who were they? I heard a floorboard creak upstairs and quickly returned to my room, my heart pounding.
The reflection in the powered-off television revealed their secret. The next morning, Dave, still smiling, told me he had fixed my car. I was ecstatic and just wanted to leave as quickly as possible. While he was getting the car from the garage, I waited in the living room. I sat on the couch across from a large old television with a dark powered-off screen, and in its glass I saw the reflection of the room. I saw the couch I was sitting on. I saw the armchair, and I saw them, Dave and his wife, standing in the corner of the room. But in the reflection, they weren't smiling. Their faces were completely blank, devoid of all emotion, and their mouths, where their mouths should have been, there were only smooth, featureless patches of skin, no lips, no opening, like mannequins. I spun my head around. They were standing in the same spot, but now their faces were normal again, with their wide, kind smiles. They had seen me see, and Dave's smile grew even wider. "Time to go," he said.
The last smile in my rearview mirror still haunts me. I drove as fast as I could. I didn't say a word, just thanked him and got in the car. As I was pulling away from their house, I glanced in my rearview mirror. Dave was standing on the porch, waving goodbye. His smile was impossibly wide, unnatural. And in that moment, for a split second, his face seemed to glitch, like a bad special effect. The smile slid off, and underneath it, I saw that smooth, blank skin again. Then it was back to normal. I don't know what they were. Creatures that steal faces? Some kind of mannequins trying to mimic people?
I only know one thing. They let me go. But I'm not sure they didn't give me something in return. Sometimes in the morning, when I'm brushing my teeth, I find it hard to smile. The muscles in my face feel stiff. And sometimes when I look at my own reflection, it seems to me that my own smile is a little too wide.
Have you ever felt like you were being followed? Now imagine you're on an empty highway doing 80 miles per hour, and the person following you is just walking. It sounds like madness. I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes last summer. My name is Ethan, and I don't know if I was running from him or if maybe he was just walking me to where I was already going. I first noticed him in my rearview mirror. I was moving to a different state, driving on a long, straight-as-an-arrow stretch of highway in Arizona. All around me was just red desert and a sun-scorched sky. I was alone on the road. I happened to glance at my rearview mirror and saw a small dark speck far behind me. I looked closer. It was a person. He was just walking on the shoulder in the same direction I was going. I was surprised. What was a person doing in the middle of the desert, dozens of miles from the nearest town? I figured maybe his car had broken down. I drove for a few more miles and looked in the mirror again. He was there, still walking. He hadn't gotten smaller, hadn't fallen behind. He was the same distance away. It was strange. I wrote it off as a heat haze distortion, as fatigue.
The unchanging distance was what turned the oddity into terror. An hour passed. I had driven about 80 miles. I had almost forgotten about him when I glanced in the mirror again. My heart skipped a beat. He was there, the exact same distance away as he was an hour ago. He hadn't gotten closer, hadn't gotten farther. A small, dark figure walking calmly on the shoulder. It was physically impossible. I couldn't outrun him. Whatever my speed, he maintained a perfect distance. My brain refused to accept it. I floored the gas pedal. 90 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour. I was flying down the empty highway. I drove like that for 5 minutes, and then, trembling, I looked in the mirror. He was there, the same small speck at the same distance. He was just walking, not running, walking at his same calm, unhurried pace. This wasn't just a follower. This was something that ignored the laws of physics, something for which my speed had no meaning.
The attempt to escape was the worst decision. Panic seized me. I took the first exit I saw, onto some old abandoned road. I drove down it, kicking up clouds of dust. I thought I had lost him. I stopped to catch my breath. The silence of the desert was deafening. I didn't dare look in the mirror. After a minute, I heard a sound. I looked in the mirror. Coming around the bend, out of the cloud of dust I had left, was him. He was walking calmly down the road, approaching my car. I could see him better now. He was dressed in dark, old-fashioned clothes, his face obscured by the shadow of a hat. He wasn't hurrying. He was just walking. And I understood. He wasn't chasing me. I couldn't get away from him, not because he was fast, but because he was tied to me, like a shadow. I started the car and sped back to the main highway. When I got on, I looked in the mirror. He was far behind me again.
at his usual distance.
The stop at a gas station was the moment of horrifying realization. A few hours later, I needed gas. I pulled off at a lonely old gas station in the middle of nowhere. I got out of the car, my legs feeling like jelly, and I didn't dare take my eyes off my rearview mirror. As I was pumping gas, I could see him. He was still walking on the main highway, paying no attention to my exit. He slowly passed by and began to move into the distance. I felt an incredible sense of relief. It's over. I was wrong. It was just a weird hallucination. I paid for the gas, got in my car, started it, and just as I was about to pull out, I took one last look in the mirror. The main highway was empty, but then I shifted my gaze to my side view mirror. He was standing at the exit of the gas station, by the stop sign. He was waiting. He hadn't followed me down the highway. He was waiting for me on my path. He knew where I had turned. I realized I wasn't running from him. He was leading me. The final truth was waiting for me at the end of the road. I drove all night, and he was behind me. At dawn, I finally reached a small, sleepy town, my destination. I stopped in front of my new house. I looked in the mirror. He was standing at the entrance to the town, looking in my direction. Then he slowly turned around and started walking back the way he came, back into the desert. I didn't understand. Why did he stop? The next day, as I was unpacking, I found a box of old photos my mom had sent me. I started looking through them, and in one of them, taken 20 years ago, I saw this house and a little me playing on the lawn. And in the background, on the road, stood a man in dark clothes and a hat, watching me. It was him, and I suddenly remembered everything. I wasn't moving to a new town. I was coming back. I was coming home. And he, whoever he was, a spirit, a memory, my own personal guide, had just made sure that this time I made it all the way. He wasn't chasing me. He was just walking me home. And the scariest part is, I don't know what will happen when I have to leave here again.